Sometimes rich dudes come into CSGO thinking, I have so much money that I'll just buy the best players, give them a crazy salary, and they'll win every tournament. It's kind of sad and kind of funny at the same time. Usually these people who have no idea about CSGO whatsoever end up just signing some tier 3 roster who have no real future and then leave in half a year with no results. But the biggest financial failure in CSGO was actually made by Cloud9. They paid $2 million for a team. How did it happen that an organization so experienced could sign a roster that wouldn't win a single tournament and then would disband in a few short months? Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe because you're watching CYBERSHOKE, and today we'll tell you how Cloud9 made the most expensive mistake in the history of competitive CSGO. So, in order to fully understand this story, we need to know what was going on in the mind of the man who paid for all of this. So, meet Jack Etienne, the founder and CEO of Cloud9. Although that $2 million roster was signed at the end of 2020, this actually all started in Boston way back in January 2018. There, Cloud9 made one of the brightest home runs in CSGO and became world champions.
A single shot. Guardian waits patiently as Cloud9 sets the push up. Oh, it's happened! They made it work! Cloud9 are your E-League Major champions!
It seemed like winning a major would only strengthen the bonds between the players, but in reality, things went the other way. Some players on the team felt a lot of discomfort, and Jack Etienne himself stated that, quote, there was already a huge cloud, get it, over the future of the team. So, Cloud9 fell apart. Stewie, who had just signed a 3-year contract, decided to accept an offer from MIBR, wanting to see what it's like to play with Fallen. Then Tarek talked the C9 management into buying out his friend FNS from Complexity. They spent $200,000 on this, but had to kick FNS after just 2 months. American players were replaced by Europeans. Stiko, Flusha, Kiyoshima, and Golden played for Cloud9 at that time. Jack continued to actively invest in his project, but during each of those times, when it looked like everything was hunky-dory, something bad happened. For instance, Golden, who was an essential part of the team, had to leave due to some health issues, and Flusha tilted right there on the major after his mother passed away. Then Cloud9 formed their roster around Daps, and Jack was pretty satisfied with the guys. But unfortunately, a conflict came up. The players demanded full control over the coach and analyst, and Etienne just couldn't agree with that. So he sold this roster to Gen G and bought South African team ATK. The guys showed some decent CS, and Jack was excited about what they could achieve in a couple of years. But then, the pandemic hit. Etienne had to not only solve all the financial problems, but also ensure the health and safety for his staff, who were all living together in one big house. Mainly, it was players and coaches. It was obvious that if the virus got into the gaming house, it would be fatal for the organization, and no one wanted that to happen. So every resident of Cloud9 Gaming House signed a simple but strict contract. No walking outside and no unauthorized guests. Then Etienne got a message from HenryG, a well-known esports caster whose voice we're sure you can recognize.
Here we go then, it's Nico coming in, the backline takes down HenryG. All of a sudden it's flipped around once again. 2 versus 1, the world's best player up against it to stay in the game. They'll go for the fake defuse, but Nico not taking the bait. Can he finish things off? Yes, he can! We're going to overtime! Oh my God!
Greer, full of ambitions, was looking for a job, and Jack was happy to hire him as a manager. Here's what Henry proposed to Etienne. Due to the specifics of the North American market, it's much easier to monetize US-based teams. So why wait a whole year or two for their roster to climb up to the Tier 1 level when we could just sell them at a high price and then sign some experienced European team instead? Etienne liked this idea so much that he even hired Kassad to help Henry gather a team. Also, 2 things gave Cloud9 a big advantage. Firstly, their South African roster was playing great, so their cost was pretty high. Secondly, the Rio Major got canceled and there were a lot of free players on the market. It all seemed like a great deal. What could possibly go wrong? Well, one day, Cloud9 CSGO players, with the full knowledge that their actions could possibly endanger a lot of people, let an outsider into the gaming house. But Etienne forgave them after a long conversation. But unfortunately, the guys didn't learn their lesson. After a while, they let an outsider walk right into their gaming house again. This time, Jack felt like he needed to do something. Yeah, Henry's plan sounded great, but Etienne knew that if he let this go unpunished, the next time these guys would go and contaminate the whole gaming house and essentially kill Cloud9. The CSGO roster was evicted and put into another living space. Jack also decided to bench them all, and because of this, the overall cost of the team dropped. From the moment that Cloud9 won the major in Boston, Etienne invested more and more money into building new rosters, but failed every time because of some random setbacks. But the fact that the European market was full of free players gave Jack a bit of hope, and so he, having a lot of faith in Henry, decided to go all out and spend as much money as he needed to in order to build the ideal team. Jack made a huge bet on Henry's experience. Here's what he said. Additionally, as Cloud9 has grown, my ability to spend a lot of time with each one of these teams, to really watch these teams and make sure they're growing the way they should, gets harder and harder. The ability to bring on someone like Henry, who brings all of this experience, can really ease that pressure from me, and I can put that trust in someone who has good experience. Henry is very driven to make a high-performing team, and there is a lot of risk for his reputation for him to go out there and say that he's going to build a great team. So I know he's going to work extremely hard to protect that. It's a good motivation for him to make sure that he delivers. But Henry had an unusual vision of managing an esports team. He wanted to not only gather the best roster, but do it in a way that everyone would be speaking about them. Also, Henry was a big hater of closed contracts, so he announced right away that the details of his agreements with the players would be public. Alex was the first signed player. He was surely the best option from all the free IGLs on the market. With him, Vitality reached the playoffs at 11 big lands in a row. The amount of that deal was $1.65 million. That's the total number of Alex's buyout and his salary for the next 3 years. Etienne remembers that Cloud9's top managers were having a hard time understanding this deal. Jack also received a call from the CEO of another organization. The guy was upset about Cloud9 revealing the cost of the players because now every player in the world would be asking for a higher salary. For Etienne, it was just a confirmation that Henry and him were doing everything right. Henry also made a lot of noise on social media. For example, he stated that Cloud9 players wouldn't have the obligation to stream. It was a reference to all organizations in the world that oblige their players to be active on Twitch. Also, he gave the new Cloud9 roster a nickname and promoted it a lot. He called his team the Colossus. The Colossus is a strong word by itself, but it was also a big taunt to Complexity. You see, Jason Lake, an owner of Complexity, was a big figure in esports. Everyone loved this guy because he built a big organization. Lake is highly respected because he's not just another entrepreneur with investors' cash, but a normal guy like everyone else who loves esports. In time, the community started to call Complexity the Juggernaut. The dictionary says that a juggernaut is a massive, inexorable force, campaign, movement, or object that crushes whatever is in its path. So it was all a big compliment to Complexity and Jason Lake himself. So when Henry started to call Cloud9 the Colossus and promote this nickname in every one of his tweets, it was obvious that he was using this to taunt Complexity. It's up to you to decide the moral aspect of this, but if Henry wanted to advertise the new Cloud9 team as much as possible, then we must admit he did a good job at it. 10 days later, on September 19, 2020, Cloud9 revealed the names of two more players, Mezi and Woxic. Mezi was a good rifler with a promising future, and Woxic, well, he was a superstar. At that time, the Turkish Opera was in good shape and could easily compete with any Tier 1 sniper. That being said, the amount of money Cloud9 announced had already surpassed $3 million. Cloud9 became a money bag for European orgs. Etienne remembers, I could tell you, when I go buy out a player, all of a sudden the buyouts double. All the owners get like dollar signs in their eyes and start rubbing their hands because they know Jack's coming to pay. For me, that does suck a bit because players would go like, yeah, my buyout is probably going to be about like 100K, and then I come knocking and it's always like, nothing less than 500K, Jack. This is the cost and this is the price. And I'm like, that's not what I'm hearing. 2 or 3 other teams are getting a bit smaller offers. Well, that's the Cloud9 price. I'm like, Okay. With the signing of the 2 remaining players, that $3 million cost we mentioned before had doubled. And the craziest thing is that Cloud9 didn't sign some best of the best superstars. No, the new Cloud9 players were Floppy and S-Dog. The roster was fully assembled on October 25th, 2020, and they were preparing for their first tournament that was due in just 2 weeks. It was the Flashpoint with a huge $1 million prize pool. Pretty ironic, but Etienne actually had to pay for a spot there. There was huge hype around Cloud9. For 2 months, they teased the community with big announcements, and now it was finally time to see how the most expensive team in CSGO history would actually play. But there was absolutely nothing out of the ordinary. They lost to VP and OG with 0-2 scores, and just like that, Cloud9 got eliminated. Fans kept their faith in Cloud9, and the team itself didn't get upset. After all, it had only been their very first tournament together. But although that team was pretty strong and well-balanced, it was a stretch to call it the Colossus. By that time, a superstar team had to include players like Simple, Glaive, Nico, or coldzera, not S-Dog, Metzi, or Floppy. Don't get us wrong, those guys are good, but not S-tier level good. 2 weeks later, Cloud9 played at the Blast tournament. There they beat NIP and Complexity, but failed to win a game against Mouse. And not long after that, they lost 2 more times. Cloud9 took 8th place on the DreamHack Winter, and then lost to Fours in the semifinal of an online tournament. And then, after just 2 months, Kassad the coach decided to leave the team. The community was left with a lot of questions. Guys, your project is colossal, right? Why make changes after just a couple of small failures? Later, Henry explained that Kassad and Alex had completely different views on Counter-Strike and just couldn't work together. But we wonder why that hadn't been noticed or taken into account before they signed on Alex. That's the question with no answer. The next tournament hadn't even started yet before Cloud9 made one more roster move. They benched Woxic, the most powerful player on the team. In a statement, they said that the time zones between Turkey and North America are so different that it had been impossible to work with Woxic. But again, how did they not think that through from the start? This question too has no answer. Zeppa came to fill Woxic's shoes, and even though Cloud9's results were objectively bad, they still signed a big and loud contract for 3 years. The best achievements of that team are 5th place at CS Summit and Snow Sweet Snow. Later, on March 26, 2021, Cloud9 posted a short announcement. There they said that building a team in COVID times was way harder than they thought, and that they're going to temporarily be leaving CSGO. The players went their own ways, and Cloud9 returned to Counter-Strike after 1 year, signing the Gambit roster. It's up to you what to think of Cloud9 here. Some people believe it's all just a case of bad luck, and that they actually had a chance to change CSGO, while others think it was just a big waste of money. But here's the final fact. That Cloud9 team, including 3-year salaries, cost Etienne $6 million, and it didn't net him a single win in any tournament. So it is, objectively, the biggest financial failure in the history of competitive CSGO. A good thing is that the current Cloud9 roster is looking pretty damn strong. Hey, if you like this kind of video where we tell some CSGO stories, please let us know in the comments and we'll make more. And of course, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe because you are watching CYBERSHOKE. Bye for now.